To the studentloanjustice.org live stream for Monday, June 26th. We are Student Loan Justice. We are the oldest, largest, first, and really only true grassroots group fighting only and absolutely for student loan justice. That means two things: the return of bankruptcy rights, as the Constitution calls for, uniform bankruptcy rights. Number two, student loan cancellation. So the cancellation of all federally owned student loans by executive order. It can be done with not one dime drawn from the Treasury, not one penny added to the national debt. Quite frankly, President Trump should have canceled all of the loans back in 2020 when we on this group first broached that whole thing. We on this group were the first people to call on the president to cancel student loans by executive order. So all the stuff that we're seeing right now, believe it or not, started with this group. So everybody out there, and you know who you are, thousands of people, tens of thousands, actually, hundreds of thousands if you really think about it. Y'all have a lot to be very proud of, that we are now on the precipice of finding out whether or not President Biden's student loan cancellation will happen. And that decision is going to come down tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, 10 a.m. Eastern time. If you would like to be interviewed for your reaction, whether it's plus or minus to however this decision goes, look up and down on our Facebook group if you're watching us on Facebook, and make a comment in the post where I ask people who want to be interviewed to make a comment, and we will make that happen. We've got a tremendous amount of media interest right now. So last week we were featured top story, front page, I believe, at The Guardian. And in what I think was even probably a bigger story on Friday, we were interviewed in Newsweek magazine. And by the way, I want to salute and applaud, and you should also, all of our members who were interviewed for those really strong articles. So I have to say, guys, we all have a lot to be proud of in that we are now finally on the verge of maybe not actually getting a student loan cancellation by executive order. But guys, Joe Biden's student loan cancellation was lame from the get-go. Quite frankly, I think Biden kind of wants to lose this case, to be honest with you. I don't think he ever really wanted to cancel student loans. But guys, $10,000 or $20,000 is nothing to the worst hurt borrowers. And more than that, if they write off $10,000, they're going to make back that $10,000 in interest and penalties and fees on the worst hurt borrowers pretty quickly. And the most important thing is that whichever way this Supreme Court case goes tomorrow, they are going to turn the loans back on, and bankruptcy rights are going to remain gone from the loans. That right there is the student loan scam. Now, we've been doing this for 18 years, guys. The absence of bankruptcy as it exists for all other loans in this country lies at the core of this problem. The number one goal of our opposition, the student loan swamp, all the people making money off of the student loan scam, they want nothing more, and they probably don't really care which way this loan cancellation thing goes either, quite frankly. The number one thing they want is to see these loans turned back on and bankruptcy remaining gone from the loans. That is their license to steal from us. And I could trot out many stories about many of our members who have paid 200-300% more than they originally borrowed, yet they still owe 200-300% or even more in many cases than they borrowed. This is the student loan scam, and whatever the Supreme Court does or doesn't do tomorrow is not going to change that fact. We have still got to fight. In fact, we've got to fight harder than we've ever fought before as a group to get Congress to return bankruptcy to student loans as it exists for all other loans. And it becomes even more important, guys, because, I mean, think about it. It's been 3 years since people have been paying. The student debt collection industry has not made much money at all over the past 3 years. They are very hungry. They are drooling. They are sharpening their knives. And this could get in fact, this will get very, 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 very ugly if September 1st comes and we don't have at least the constitutionally enshrined right of bankruptcy returned to us. Now, remember, guys, if you're new to the group, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, I don't want to file for bankruptcy. I just want my loans canceled. Yeah, everybody thinks that. Nobody wants to file for bankruptcy. And quite frankly, very few people, maybe even no one, will actually have to file when we get the right returned. It's just having the leverage of bankruptcy back on our side that means everything. So I hope that's clear. I'm looking for your questions and comments now, by the way, if you're watching us on Facebook and or Twitter. So if you have any thoughts about how the decision might go tomorrow, etc., I'd be very happy to hear them. I personally, I almost don't really care which way the decision goes tomorrow, to be quite honest with you, because as I said, the problem's going to persist. If you owe $10,000 or $20,000 in student loans, you're not in our group, more than likely. But if I had to guess, and I've been making this prediction for about the past 3 weeks or a month now, maybe a little bit longer, I think the court is probably going to affirm Joe Biden's cancellation. And I think that for two reasons. Number one, the cases are just extremely weak. And even conservative judges know when people have standing to sue or not. Amy Coney Barrett, for example, has been pretty good about knocking out cases where the plaintiffs have no real standing. And so I think on standing alone, they'll probably affirm this cancellation. But and there's a number of other, and the second reason is because, quite frankly, I think that's what the swamp wants. They want to take all the visibility out of this issue. And so if this cancellation goes through, then it'll be like, okay, we're done. Student loans is no longer an issue, and they will be able to ignore us. Ignore. And, the swamp does what the swamp does best in the darkness. Like, they don't like the cameras. They don't like the spotlight. They don't like any of that. They're like cockroaches. When you go in your kitchen late at night, you turn on the cockroaches scurry when the lights are turned on. That's pretty much what the student loan swamp is. And they would be thrilled for the spotlight to be taken off of this issue so they can get back to work stealing unearned wealth from you and from me. So that's another reason why I think the Supreme Court will probably uphold Biden's student loan cancellation tomorrow. So on this, and I'm sure the other groups, many of them are straight up corrupted. Many of them are making money off of this scam and don't want to actually solve this problem because they're making too much money off of this problem. I think they're going to be kissing and crying and clinking the champagne glasses tomorrow if the Supreme Court upholds this decision. Well, here on this group, there will be no kissing or crying or pats on the backs. We have a lot to be proud of, I suppose. That's true. But guys, this is not what we called for. This is Biden's loan cancellation was essentially a fake gimmick. It was a fake loan cancellation gimmick as a cheap substitute for the constitutional bankruptcy rights that should have never been taken away. And we've seen the student loan swamp do this going back to 2007 and before. We've been doing this for a long time, ladies and gentlemen. So I hope what I'm saying gets through to you, particularly if you are new to the group. But we shall see in 15 or 16 short hours. We will know. We're going to be all over the media tomorrow. We're going to be on a couple of different national news shows. And I'll probably let you know about those maybe before the fact, but probably after the fact tomorrow afternoon. But again, if you would like to be interviewed as a borrower or as an advocate or whatever you want to call yourself, if you'd like to be interviewed for your reaction to the decision tomorrow, look up or down on this Facebook group and make a comment on the post where I talk about that. And if you're watching us on Twitter or YouTube, you can find us on Facebook. It's just facebook.com/groups/SLJ group right there. Oh, while I'm dialing in your comments, guys, I also need to say, please donate, dudes. We are on the verge of going broke. That's just, it's happened before to us, and it will surely happen again, but we are right on the verge of financial insolvency at the moment, guys. We survive and thrive and fight and win this battle on very little money, dudes. But like this week, for example, we've got to raise $700, which is a pretty big amount by our standards. So we need 20 people to donate. We need 35 people to donate $20. Hopefully by this weekend, if at all possible. So if you appreciate the work that we're doing, if you appreciate all that we've done, particularly on this student loan cancellation thing, all that we're doing now, obviously, but I think more importantly, all that we are poised to do with actually getting this problem solved by actually getting bankruptcy rights returned to these loans, please don't let this group disappear. Just please donate. So I can shut up about it because I suck at fundraising, if you haven't noticed. So I'm seeing a couple comments. It looks like we have 9 comments here. I'll try to get through a few of them. I'm going to try and keep it rather short tonight, though, as I usually never do. Gordon Wayne Watts says, yeah, I want to be interviewed. See my Facebook page. Okay. Got it. Gordon is a conservative, by the way, in case you're new to the group. Fully half of our members are either Republican or conservative. Very important point that nobody realizes. This is not a blue-haired liberal issue. This is an American issue. And if you look at the worst hurt states by student loans, they're not blue states. It's not Massachusetts or Washington and Oregon and California. It's Texas and Florida and North-South Carolina, etc. I see Jackie Abram from Texas is with us here tonight. Hey, Jackie, how are you doing? I see Joanna Kearns from Florida is with us here tonight. Florida, state budget of Florida, $80 billion. Student loan debt in Florida, $120 billion. That's like 12 years worth of revenue of Disney World, by the way. I was kind of toying around with statistics the other day, and yep, that's true. $120 billion hanging around the necks of the people of Florida. The state of Florida is sinking in mostly federal student loan debt. Same thing with Texas, by the way. Texas is even worse. $141 billion of mostly federal student loan debt hanging around the necks of the people of Florida or Texas. Texas is being sucked dry by these federal student loans. And by the way, we're also fighting for private student loan borrowers as well. Absolutely. Bankruptcy rights have got to be returned to private student loans. You know, the founding fathers called for uniform bankruptcy laws, aka rights, in the Constitution, ahead of the power to declare war, ahead of the power to raise an army in the Constitution. Founders were pretty smart. Certainly on the student loan monstrosity, the student loan abomination, the student loan predatory lending scam is precisely the sort of thing that the founding fathers wished to avoid when they called for uniform bankruptcy laws, aka rights. But more than that, they called for equal protection under the law. And student loan borrowers are not given equal protection under the bankruptcy laws. They are specifically singled out and placed in a class with deadbeat dads and criminals for not having access to the bankruptcy courts. So are we criminals? Was going to college a crime? I don't think so. We don't have to put up with this bullshit, guys. Remember this. Even before the pandemic, most student loan borrowers had stopped paying on their loans. 58.9% of all federal student loan borrowers were not making payments on their loans before the pandemic. And even discounting for the people who were in college or in their grace period, it's still over half of all borrowers were not making payments on their student loans. They had stopped paying. So that is going to go up. We are going to see a mass default in this country. And as I said, the collection industry, the student debt collection industry is drooling at that prospect. Now, why the other groups claiming to be fighting for students aren't fighting for bankruptcy, you'll have to ask them. Quite frankly, I would say they're corrupted. Like one of those groups, it's hard to tell where the debt collection industry ends and they begin. They do major business transactions with the student loan debt collection industry. The other group, they're straight up making huge money on commissions and fees on roping their own members by targeting their own members, preying upon their own members and getting them to either consolidate or rehabilitate their loans. So all is not what you might think it is, guys. We on this group right here, we are just normal people with student loans. I'm a long-time defaulted student loan borrower, by the way. We are just normal people looking at the data and fighting really in the only way to get this problem solved. As long as bankruptcy remains gone from these loans, guys, we can beg Joe Biden or Donald Trump or the next president forever to cancel student loans. And what we'll get is nonsense, much like what we've already seen. So whether you would ever or never file for bankruptcy, guys, we've got to fight for it. And I think we're in a pretty good position, by the way, no matter how the Supreme Court decision goes tomorrow. We've seen many Republicans who now control the House, so that's important. We've seen many Republicans come out and strongly call for the return of bankruptcy rights to student loans. So we need to build on that, guys. We are the only group in the country fighting for this. I kid you not. We're it. We are the tip of the spear in the fight to actually solve the student loan problem. So if you want actual, not pretend, not $10,000 knocked off your balance, actual student loan justice, this is the only game going. This is the only game in town, guys. So Joanna in Florida says, of this, and are you aware of the fact? Emails. Yeah, I've seen some of your emails, John. It's been a really busy day, so I can't see them all. I get hundreds, sometimes thousands of emails every day. Robert Moore says, question, how might we respond to critics in the event the court allows cancellation to happen? As Gordon Wayne Watts rightly says, critics likely will state that we got our payout. Yes, you're exactly right, Robert. Strategically, it's going to be really difficult for us going forward if the court affirms this cancellation. And I think that's going to happen. But the fact remains, guys. There's two things to be aware of. Yes, exactly. The critics will say, okay, you got yours. We're done. Don't even murmur about student loans for the next 5 years at least, right? They're going to say something like that. But the fact will absolutely remain that this is a heinously broken system. And in fact, when they turn the loans back on, if they allow this cancellation, even fewer people will resume repaying than had they not affirmed the cancellation. So all things being equal, if this cancellation didn't happen, come September 1st, my best estimate is that somewhere around 75% of everybody was not going to resume paying on their loans. If this cancellation happens, then literally 20 million borrowers will be done. 20 million people is the estimate had $10,000 or maybe $12,000 or $15,000 if they had the Pell Grant, or $20,000 or less. So 20 million people will be out of the program. Now, if you owe $10,000 or less, or if you have the Pell Grant and you owe $15,000 or $20,000 or less, those are probably people who were most likely to resume paying on their loans when they turn the thing back on. Because think about it. If you owe $10,000 in student loans or less, you're like, okay, all right, I can knock that out. It'll be hard, but I can do it. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. With all of those people gone, the only people who are going to be left are going to be the people who owe high balances. And even before this pandemic, 85% of all borrowers were never going to be able to repay their loans. So the percentage of non-payers, in other words, the percentage of people who will not resume paying on their loans, if this cancellation goes through, will be probably even higher than it would have been otherwise. So if 75% of the people weren't going to resume paying their loans, all things being equal, if this cancellation goes through, it's going to be closer to 80, maybe even 85% will not resume making payments on their loans. So, I mean, from our perspective, guys, it doesn't really change things at all because bankruptcy has got to be returned to these loans, and that is just a fact. But it will be tough. It will be tough. It will be tougher for us if this cancellation goes through because of the reasons that you mentioned, Robert. Then if the cancellation is denied, I don't think the cancellation is going to be denied, guys. I just don't think it's going to be. I do not think they're going to put the kibosh. I don't think the Supreme Court is going to put the kibosh on this cancellation. So anyways, I know this is kind of down in the weeds from a policy standpoint, and hopefully what I said is clear, but we're screwed whichever way it goes, guys. But strategically, we're probably more screwed if the cancellation is allowed. And I think it will be. You may disagree. Evie Porter says 10 or 20K on 223,000. Laughable. Right. Exactly, Evie. Many of our members say, you may as well add $10,000 onto my loans because it's just nonsense. We're talking about monopoly money here. For example, I originally borrowed $35,000. My loans were thrown into default 20 plus years ago. I have refused to pay, and I remain refusing to pay one thin dime until, at a minimum, the bankruptcy rights that should have never been taken away from student loans are returned. So my balance right now is probably, it's got to be north of $400,000 at this point. So it's meaningless. So yeah, you want to add 10 grand onto mine? Yeah, knock yourself out. Laughable, as Evie says. Student loans are becoming one big national joke, guys. The entire student loan, the entire federal student loan program is disintegrating in slow motion, albeit, but it is collapsing in front of us. The data is irrefutable. By all rational metrics, this thing is done. Lending systems fail from time to time, ladies and gentlemen. And however the Supreme Court rules tomorrow, this lending system is still failed. That doesn't change that fact one bit. But as I said, it's going to be tougher for us if they allow this cancellation tomorrow. I don't really hope one way or the other. Everything that we do tends to be very difficult in the first place. I don't begrudge people with $10,000 or $20,000. I mean, I would like to see people get their loans written off. That's perfectly fine with me. But whichever way it goes, guys, it doesn't change the fact we've got to fight for the return of bank. We will see meaningful student loan cancellation across the board probably when we get the leverage of bankruptcy returned to us. But we're not going to see anything meaningful. I mean, the most meaningful thing that we'll see is little tiny gimmicks like this Biden thing forever. That's all we're going to see as long as the constitutionally enshrined leverage of bankruptcy remains gone. So that's the most important thing that I'll tell you tonight. Okay, guys, I've gone on a little longer than I was really thinking. Maybe one last comment from Jackie in Texas. She says the non-paying statistics are 80% won't pay. Imagine that if all the lowest debts are wiped out, the non-payers will be easily close to 90%. Right. That's exactly the point I was making earlier, Jackie. That's right. Yeah, whatever the non-payment rate was going to be, and I think it was going to be 75, maybe 80%. It's going to be 80, 85, 90% if half the borrowers with the least amount of debt are cleared, are out of the federal student loan spider's nest. So, okay, guys. So we'll see how it goes tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed this live stream. Hope you'll tell everybody with student loans to join this group right here. We are the only group fighting meaningfully for actual, not pretend, actual student loan justice. And I hope you can appreciate that fact. 10 a.m. tomorrow. Wake up early if you want. Go to the Supreme Court website and log on at 10 a.m. Eastern time so you can see the results for yourself. All right. Peace. Good luck. Godspeed. Please donate. Please. And God bless everyone.